What's going on YouTube? It's Tage back again with another video, and today I'm giving you another 2-round NFL mock draft, this time focused on the post Tyreek Hill trade going to Miami, leaving Kansas City. I do apologize, I'm a little late to join this conversation, but nonetheless, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button, and if you're new around here, want to see more mock draft content, more NFL content in general, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button, and join for a conversation down below in the comments section. I'm going to be pushing a lot more mock drafts before, we get to the end of April. Be sure to tell me what you think your favorite team should do, what prospects I have too high, which ones I have fallen too far. I'd love to have your thoughts, and we can talk about it down below in the comments section. So today we are using the PFF mock draft simulator, and that's because we will have a trade in the mix. So a little bit of a different site. Not that I think that makes a world of difference, but let's jump into it. Aiden Hutchinson going number 1 to the Jaguars. It feels all but inevitable at this point. And then here we get to the Lions. I'm going to change from Akim Ekwonu. Thought about Travon Walker. I think Walker, my next video is going to be another mock, and I think Walker's going to be the play there. But this time around, let's go Kyle Hamilton. I could really see, longtime NFL DB Aaron Glenn saying, hey, give me a guy like Kyle Hamilton, and I can give you something that you really don't get out of most normal safeties, the ability to have a guy be a playmaker in the box, the deep safety who's ranging all over the field, but also make an impact in the run game, do a little bit of everything. So I could see Glenn falling in love with Hamilton. And, also I want to talk about, how about Kyle Hamilton, potentially joining the team going on Hard Knocks. As a Notre Dame fan, I'd love to see that. But pretty cool that Detroit's going to be on Hard Knocks. I'm all for that. Moving on, Houston Texans. I'm going to have this be Akim Ekwonu. Looks like Laramie Tunsil is going to be sticking around at least for the time being. Akim Ekwonu could kick out and be, your replacement for Howard at right tackle. He could also be a guard, gives you some flexibility, and, maybe in a couple years' time, Akim Ekwonu makes the transition to play tackle full-time. So a lot of avenues in which this can become a worthwhile pick, whether it's right tackle, guard, then tackle, or if you're Houston saying, we think he's the best player and the guy with the most upside, and we have a long way to go, so let's go with Akim Ekwonu. Any way you slice it, I think this is a valuable pick there for Houston. Then we get to the Jets. I'm going to have Kayvon Thibodeau here. I've talked about this 1,000 times. This is the edge rushing complement opposite of Carl Lawson. They just extended and gave big money to John Franklin Myers, move him across the defensive line, and Quinnen Williams, get that pass rush in a really healthy spot, and that allows for, Bryce Hall, DJ Reed to be good enough, and all you need in the secondary. Next up, the Giants. No surprise here, Evan Neal, I think, plug and play right tackle at the minimum. Andrew Thomas did play a little bit at right tackle. Let me explain part of the reason I think I've been more keen on Neal being the pick here versus, maybe an Akim Ekwonu or Charles Cross, though my last video had Cross, and I was making the argument maybe he is such a fluid mover laterally that he can make the switch to right tackle. But part of my reason I don't want to see Andrew Thomas move from left tackle to right tackle, I'm not a Giants fan or anybody that's that heavily invested into New York, but Thomas has made so many big strides forward as an NFL player at left tackle. I would hate to see him have to reset completely and go play right tackle. Now, I know he did it at Georgia, and he did it well, but that was in the college ranks, and that was a handful of years ago. So I'd hate to see him have to completely reset and then flip everything he's already made progress learning from the left side and then do the same on the right side. Neal, a little bit less separation between him being a right tackle, and since he's going to have to improve and get better and get acclimated to the NFL speed, I think plugging him in at right tackle makes a ton of sense there. And then we get to Malik Willis being the pick here at number 6 for the Carolina Panthers. There he is. I don't love this spot here for Malik Willis because I'm a guy who, the best of Malik Willis would be awesome to tune in and watch on Sundays, right? So I want to see him succeed. I want to see him become his best version of himself. I'm just not sure Carolina is the place, and, this could be a move that maybe extends Matt Rule for, extends him for another year, basically gets him 1 year closer to seeing the completion of that 6-year contract he got when he was hired out of Temple. But, ask Matt Nagy how that turned out with him and Justin Fields. So no guarantee, but Carolina takes a swing for the fences here. Next up, back to the Giants. I think this makes a ton of sense. It sounds like James Bradberry is almost certainly on the move, and because of that, the next mock I'm going to do, I'm going to have the Giants trading one of these 2 picks. But because corner is about to become such a massive need with Bradberry being on the move, makes it really tough for the Giants to try to justify moving on from one of those top 7 picks because you need a tackle and you need a corner. And Sauce Gardner is a perfect fit for what Wink Martindale does, and he commands a defense that has star-studded cornerback talent. So it is not just a need, a vital need for what they're trying to do, but tackle is too. One, because you need to get better there. Two, because you got to see what Daniel Jones is all about. So really tough spot the Giants have worked themselves into with the Bradbury trade. I don't know if really the Giants should consider moving back, because they need to address both those, both those needs to be competitive. Garrett Wilson going to keep being the pick here at pick number 8. I could see Drake London being in play. Sorry, I hit the wrong thing. But, London with Kyle Pitts, bully ball, no doubt about it. Throwing up 50-50 balls down the field. Whoever, the quarterback is beyond Marcus Mariota will enjoy that aspect. But I think Garrett Wilson gives you a natural separator, someone who can win at all 3 levels, and nice compliment to what you have with Kyle Pitts, who, tight end, but basically a wide receiver. I think it's a nice 1-2 duo for Mariota and whoever moving forward, which we will address the quarterback position in this video for Atlanta. Next up, Seattle, I think it's an awesome value here with Charles Cross as your Dwayne Brown replacement. You have Stu Forsythe plug in at right tackle. Then they got a great value in him in the 6th round last year. Tackle duo set for whoever ends up being the quarterback of the future, which we will also address later on. Then I have Drake London being the pick here at 10. Now, all this seems very similar. Cross has fallen a little bit compared to my prior, mocks. And I have Evan Neal falling to 5. That's a little different. But this is where the true change really comes. And this will allow me to talk about the Kansas City trade. I don't think the Chiefs should do what I'm about to do. But the value on, the trade value chart matches up here. I'm going to have Washington in a spot here where London's off the board and Kyle Hamilton's gone. Those, to me, feel like the best possible outcomes for Washington. Sure, Derek Stingley Jr. should be in consideration here, and he could be a potential CB1 of the future. William Jackson only signed a 3-year deal a year ago, and Kendall Fuller's getting up there in age. But in this spot, maybe Washington can address their 2 biggest needs in my eyes in safety and wide receiver, big body wide receiver that is, later on in the 1st round by trading with the Kansas City Chiefs. I am going to force this, but you can double check, look up, NFL trade value chart. 29 and 30 for 11 is about right. It's just PFF doesn't want to see this go through. I reckon I'm going to have to move myself. That's fine. And will put me back. But I think this is not what I would do if I was Kansas City, because I think the best way you can have an argument to say that Tyreek Hill trade made us better is by having 5 draft picks, 3 this year, 2 next year, and being able to say, look, we reset the books a fair amount, and we got better as a team, and the sum of the parts is better despite losing an impact player and a superstar in Tyreek Hill. So I think that's the best way to approach it. So trading 2 1s to condense it down to get a better one, I'm not sure that's the best way of going about this, but it does bring up an interesting scenario where, let's say Kansas City does do that, and the value does add up. And Washington, no London, no Hamilton, let's trade back and address those positions later on where maybe the value matches up more with the player we're going to get. And then Kansas City takes Jameson Williams. Now, this is easy to pick because Williams is maybe the fastest wide receiver in this draft class. Obviously didn't compete at Indy in the 40 and anything like that, but dude can move. But he's also got that horizontal twitchiness that Tyreek has. Now, that being said, banking on Jameson Williams being as good as Tyreek Hill is flawed thinking, but it really gives Kansas City an interesting wide receiver slash, throw in Travis Kelce, pass catching core, where they have multiple guys who can win at different levels. The past couple of years, it's been a lot of Tyreek Hill and a lot of Travis Kelce, supplemented by, Byron Pringles of the world, who are not that good. This gives you a situation where Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who you just signed, and Jameson Williams, without a doubt, you're deep threats. And you have Mecole Hardman, who has a lot of speed and could potentially factor in the mix there. But MVS, Jameson Williams, those guys can win down the field with their speed and their ability to just create separation down that far in the field. And then you also have guys who can win the intermediate parts with Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster. And you also have guys, and I think Jameson Williams, honestly, I'm not going to count him in this group, but when John Mechie went down, he started to pick up the slack there in that 10 to 19 yard range for Alabama. So I think he could even be a part of the mix there. But you have Kelce and Juju to win at the sticks, as I like to say, and in the middle part of the field, that 10 to 19 yard range. And then you have Williams who can win yak-wise. You have Mecole Hardman. That's maybe the best thing he does now. Travis Kelce can win yak. Juju Smith-Schuster, for that matter, can win yak. So it gives Kansas City a number of players who can win in different areas of the field, and maybe being able to move the football around. And this puts a lot more onus on Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, changing things up on the offense and being able to spread the ball around and attack different areas of the field. But it just feels like it gives Kansas City a counter for whatever defense they're going to do. Okay, you're gonna play too high, not let us throw it deep. All right, well, we got Juju, we got Travis Kelce. They'll win in the intermediate parts, and then we'll rely on the yak game, throwing screens to the line of scrimmage, extension of the run games, and forcing defenses to play single high more. So it's an interesting proposition. It's not what I would do with Kansas City, but we're trying to change things up, trying to throw scenarios out there, and the value adds up, and it creates an interesting proposition to consider. Moving on, getting to the Minnesota Vikings, I'm going to go Trent McDuffie here. Now, I know the arms are a bit of a concern. Sub 30-inch arms are really not great. But zone-heavy defense, think about Darius Williams with the Rams. And I know Kevin O'Connell was the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, but he's coming from a franchise that saw it through that lens, and I could see that way of addressing defense and with the fit on a zone-heavy defense, diminishing some of the need for long arm corners being in his head. So I think Trent McDuffie presents a really solid value to pick value situation here for Minnesota, and it's just also by far their biggest need. So in a lot of ways, one of the best players available, but also addressing a huge area of need. And I'm going to stick with Jordan Davis here. This could be a number of different players. There's just no real way to know what Houston wants to do. Derek Stingley Jr., George Karlaftis, offensive line. Travon Walker certainly play here. And I'm going to have Walker be the pick here at 14. Walker is a little bit of a player who comes down, sliding down the board. Not great production, but, crushed it at Indy. And the athletic measurables are certainly there. And you can see why NFL teams are drooling over a guy like Travon Walker. So Davis, Walker, back-to-back Georgia defensive linemen going here. For Houston, it could be a spot where you're just throwing away position value and saying, there's not many people like Jordan Davis, and I could see, Lovie Smith thinking, I mean this not really as an overt criticism, but thinking like it's 2006 and saying, I need that run-stopping nose tackle in the middle, and justifying Jordan Davis there at 13. Travon Walker going to Baltimore, of all places he could go. I say this all the time. The Ravens are one of the best spots. If you are honestly, all draft picks are projects, but a draft pick that comes with a lot of work necessary for them to hit their full stride. I mean, Baltimore's one of the best places you can go because they are a player development factory. So Walker, this is one of the best places he could go, falling down the board a little bit, but ultimately it might pay dividends if this scenario did come to fruition. Then we get to the Eagles. I'm going to stay on the defensive line here. This could certainly be George Karlaftis. I just decided to go Jermaine Johnson. They cut Derek Barnett, so edge still in play despite signing Hassan Reddick. And then at 16, let's go Derek Stingley Jr. Let's stop the slide here. At his peak, he is the most talented quarterback in this class. Now, the effort concerns are certainly there, and the injury problems are something definitely to monitor. But if Stingley pans out, I have a hard time thinking in 5 years' time we'll be wondering who the best cornerback in this draft class was. Now, to be fair, Amon Sauce Gardner could also do something similar, but I think if both players hit their absolute prime, their absolute 100% peak potential, edge goes to Derek Stingley Jr. Then we get to the Chargers. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the same pick I had in my last mock, going Trevor Penning. You complete that offensive line. That was the emphasis last offseason. Finish that mission this offseason, or really with this draft. And you've already loaded up on the defense. Still think you could use a wide receiver, but Will Fuller's still out there. We'll see what Carolina wants to do. Maybe Robbie Anderson's available. But there are other ways to find a deep threat other than the first round. And if you can get a high value, position of need, Trevor Penning, I think the stars kind of line up there, and it makes a lot of sense for LA. Then we get to the Saints. I think I had this in my last one, so I am being fairly repetitive here, and I do apologize. But Chris Olave, I mean, you really couldn't dream up a better combination or a player to play off of Michael Thomas than a Chris Olave or maybe a Jamison Williams. Those guys have just a fantastic ability being able to get open down the field. Williams might have more straight line speed. Olave did run a sub 440, excuse me, and maybe not as twitchy laterally as a Williams, but can make things happen at the line of scrimmage and in the yak game. And maybe Olave is a little bit more polished in that 10 to 19 yard range compared to a Williams, or at least we've seen more of it, so it gives you more confidence that he can live and work in that area. But in New Orleans, it'd be Michael Thomas running underneath, Chris Olave, get open, Jameis, find the open guy. So puts a nice opportunity for New Orleans to at least be playoff competitive if they add Olave and kind of add more to that wide receiver room, because right now it's Michael Thomas and not a whole lot else. Back to the Eagles. Let's go Devin Lloyd here. This could certainly be a Treylon Burks. It's the wide receiver. They're definitely missing that type of archetype, the big body dudes. But you look at this draft and it's Devin Lloyd. Okay, you got a big upgrade there at the linebacker position. And Lloyd, TJ Edwards, you can live with that tandem. You added a Jermaine Johnson. You're feeling really good about that defensive line. And you added a Derek Stingley to play opposite of Darius Slay. You look at that defense, and we're not done. And that might upset a lot of Philadelphia fans, but not done. This defense is transformed, and Jonathan Gannon is just licking his chops thinking about the talent he gets to coach up day in and day out. Steelers, I always put Sam Howell here. I mean, it's no secret. They want Malik Willis. They literally took Malik Willis out to dinner before his pro day. And I live in Lynchburg, Virginia, so I'm trying to find out where he went because, potential recommendation of sorts for me. But that being said, I think that's totally in play, and that's going to lead us into our next mock for the next video. So be on the lookout for that later this week. For the Patriots, Andrew Booth Jr. feels like he makes so much sense. I've seen him falling into the second round of some mocks, and there's always going to be holdovers and players you're like, I thought they were a first-round talent. How are they there in day 2? But Booth Jr., man, just his ability to play man and zone, I could just see so many defenses coveting that versatility. Has good size, good athletic measurables. He's just solid across the board. And because of that, I think the high floor puts him into the first round for sure. But also, given his athletic measurables, he's not just a starter. He's someone who comes with potential to be a lot more than just that. I am going to have Treylon Burks coming off the board here at 22 for the Green Bay Packers. They like these big body wide receivers. This is your Devontae Adams replacement. And it's kind of interesting. I don't think it's a great comparison, but Burks with the ability to play inside and out and did a whole lot for Arkansas in the slot. You start to see more and more Devontae Adams in the slot and ways to engineer him some potential openings. Not that he needs any help getting open because he's the best route runner in football right now, but ways that Matt LaFleur was able to move him around and create some advantageous matchups, help Devontae Adams in that endeavor. Maybe he can do something similar here with Treylon Burks. I'd be interested to see that. We're not done with wide receiver Green Bay, but it won't be in round 1, so a little bit different there than previous mocks. To the Arizona Cardinals, I'm going to have George Karlaftis come off the board here. I do think he's a better fit in 4-3, putting his hand down in the dirt and rushing there, but that said, go to nickel, and he will have to do that. So stand-up edge rusher in a base 3-4, I think is fine. Huge area need for Arizona. Got to replace Chandler Jones. I think Karlaftis would be a solid selection there. I'm going to have the run on interior offensive lineman repeat itself. I can't believe it, but Tyler Linderbaum could be an upgrade over Tyler Biadasz at center, or could be your left guard of the future. I think he is good enough to be able to do that. I know he's a little undersized, but I'm not really worried about his strength. You win a wrestling contest or a matchup with Tristan Wirfs, one of the best tackles and one of the strongest tackles in the league, I think you're all right. And then we get to the Bills. I'm going to have this being Zion Johnson. Gives you that right guard of the future after you cut Darrell Williams, or some tackle flexibility, barring anything happens to Deion Dawkins or to Spencer Brown. And end things off here on this IOL run, I have Kenyon Green going to Tennessee, left guard of the future, or right tackle of the future, depending on what they want to do with Dylan Radunz. They have some options, but one of those two will start at one position, and the other will start at the other, which makes sense. And then for one of the best values in this draft, I don't think Devontae Wyatt lasts this long, but you get to this spot in the draft, and you're like, how is this guy available at 27? He's a top 15 player in the draft in this class. And then you look at the board, and you're like, I don't really know where I'd put him. So Devontae Wyatt falls down to 27. Perfect fit next to Vita Vea. This is your Ndamukong Suh replacement. Plug and play starting 3-tech in that defense. Gives you some additional pass rush, but he also is a factor in the run game. So just a great football player going to a really good team. So match made in heaven for both sides. Mutually beneficial transaction without a doubt. Back to the Green Bay Packers. Bernhard Raimann. This could be your right tackle. Billy Turner replacement. Now if you do go Raimann here at 28, if you don't like this and you're saying, Elton Jenkins can play right tackle, maybe let's go with a scenario where Tennessee goes Bernhard Raimann. They're going to play Raimann at right tackle. Kenyon Green's going to fall to 28th, and he'll be the left guard of the future, and that allows Elton Jenkins to hang out at right tackle. So, because of that IOL run, more than likely not being something we see, whether it's Zion Johnson as a potential guard tackle option or Kenyon Green, I think there is one of those two more than likely falling down to Green Bay. In this case, though, I didn't have that come to fruition. We'll save that for the next mock, I suppose. But Bernhard Raimann, if you draft him, he's your right tackle, and you have to, kick Elton Jenkins back to left guard where he's been one of the best guards in football, I think that's a luxury you wouldn't mind having. And now this is kind of the fun part of the video. I've been doing a lot of repeating here, but we got to talk about Jameson Williams at 11. For Washington, with Hamilton and London off the board, I'd see that as a spot where you could take a chance on Derek Stingley Jr., get a potential corner one of the future, but why not just trade back and address our biggest areas of need, which to me, safety, big body wide receiver. So let's go Lewis Sin. So I have another safety sneaking in the first round here. Sin has the ability to be a deep safety, but he can also come up and attack the line of scrimmage. He is a downhill, hard-hitting safety, and you pair him with Cameron Curl, who primarily lives in the box, gives you some versatility. It allows Washington to move both those guys around and try to create some headaches for opposing offenses. And the other need I said, big body wide receiver. You could go Dotson, get another speedy guy who can get open. Sky Moore of the same ilk. George Pickens would be an interesting gamble to take here. But let's go Christian Watson, a guy who's getting a ton of love. And that would give Washington 3 starting wide receivers, assuming it's Terry McLaurin and Christian Watson on the outside with Curtis Samuel manning the slot, 3-4-3 speed guys on the outside. And, give a ton of flack that Carson Wentz has deserved. Dude can throw it deep. And those guys have a ton of speed to be able to work down the field, but they're also guys who win in different areas. But Watson, a guy who can win at the catch point, has that great downfield speed, just adds a different element to this Washington offense. Honorable mention to Jahan Dotson and Sky Moore if they don't mind staying small, so to speak, and adding more route running ability and players who can win in that 10 to 19 yard range. And also one last note on this, if I mentioned, you take Watson here, you got 3-4-3 runners. De'Ami Brown makes it 4-4-4 guys, so ton of speed there to work with in Washington. And if Carson Wentz is, your starting quarterback, you're going to probably want a whole lot of speed around him and guys who you can do a lot of different things with. And Curtis Samuel is a gadget dude. Watson can win at the catch point. Terry McLaurin is a master of all things in my eyes at the wide receiver position. And De'Ami Brown, another vertical threat. I think you have a nice, well-rounded offensive core, plus Logan Thomas, of course, a big target at the tight end position. Antonio Gibson, an awesome pass catcher. J.D. McKissic back as well. So you can't say it's not because of the weapons around Carson Wentz if he does not succeed, given if the situation plays out. Which more than likely it will not, but it's fun to talk about. Then for the Cincinnati Bengals, Kyer Elam going to be the pick here. I don't necessarily know if he's a perfect scheme fit, but in this situation, you could still rely on Eli Apple, Trey Waynes, Chidobe Awuzie to play on the outside, Mike Hilton in the slot. You just kind of groom Elam into the guy you want him to be. If you run a sub 4.40, you're 6'2", and you can press the line. I think those are traits you can build off of. So I think Cincinnati could certainly be interested there, and it's a position where maybe it's their biggest area of need, so it makes some sense there as well. And for the final pick of the first round, we're going to take our Lions shot at a quarterback, Desmond Ridder. In my eyes, one of the best available, maybe the best available. I will have position rankings out eventually. I am stalling on that for a few reasons, but eventually I will release them before we get to the NFL draft, and I'm going to do it a little different, and that's why I'm stalling. But on to the second round. Let's say the Jags go crazy here and reach down the board, so to speak. And I can't find them. But we're going to go wide receiver. And you lose DJ Chark this offseason. Replace one big body, downfield vertical wide receiver with another. Pickens is going to be a gamble given the injury history. But what if Jacksonville is saying you get Pickens with their apparent love for Christian Kirk, sprinkling some Laviska Shenault, some Marvin Jones, and maybe that wide receiver room will be okay. You need Pickens to hit, and you need Kirk to be more of what he was last year than what he was in years prior. But you're trying to build a proper ecosystem around Trevor Lawrence, and I think here, top of round 2 is a spot to go. Pickens, I just went with this because bigger body guy, and that's just something they're lacking right now, some size. This obviously could be a Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson. You name a wide receiver. I don't hate it right here at 33. And then the Lions. They do get a Michigan edge rusher, but it's David Ojabo. Obviously, the Achilles injury kind of dampens his stock. But, Azeez Ojulari had a really late injury in the process and fell to the second round. Still a top, I think, 36 pick, I think is where he went. So still a top 40 guy. I think Ojabo should be in that conversation. I've heard everything from, he's still in the top 50 to he's definitely out of it. I don't know. I'm hearing conflicting things. I think Ojabo is still a good player. And he's a project. He was a guy you're going to have to wait on anyway. So if he's a little, later getting into the mix, misses OTAs and training camp, and we'll see what the recovery timeline truly becomes. We'll have a better idea of when he can start, getting on the field and developing, because that's going to be the onus right here. And, the Lions, they have time to kill. So add Ojabo into the mix. Be patient with them. Don't rush him back from injury and try to tap into the absolute best version of David Ojabo, who, without a doubt, if he hits that peak potential, is a top 10 player in this draft trust. Just because the dude, already a polished, pass rusher, you engage him in the run game and help him, stop that a little bit better, he's going to be a special player. On to the Jets. Pair of linebackers, actually, for both New York teams here. For the Jets, go with Nakobe Dean. Could certainly be a guy who goes in the first round. I'm really interested to see what these athletic numbers look like, considering, like me, procrastinating on my position tiers. Nakobe Dean's kind of putting those numbers out in the world, so we all know what his 40 time is and his 3-cone looks like, and et cetera, et cetera. But Dean gives, the Jets a sideline-to-sideline guy, ton of speed, but also can blitz. So you don't often see Robert Saleh blitz those middle linebackers, but I think the allurement of having that potentially on the table, plus just an unbelievable athlete, at least when you watch him on tape, could be something that has Robert Saleh excited to add him into the middle of that defense. And then another linebacker, this would also be a stellar spot for Nakobe Dean, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot of linebackers come off around here, and truthfully, you're going to see a lot of safeties too, but once again, I continue to have a hard time finding safety spots here in the second round just because of their positional value being, dampened a little bit. But Leo Chenal, blitz-heavy linebacker from the inside linebacker spot, and that's really what he does best, and because of that, makes a ton of sense for Wink Martindale. On to the Texans. This is a pick that might not come to fruition because Mafe may well sneak into the first round, but if he falls to 37, I could see the Texans just like a Kim Aquano, where it's like, this guy might not be the best player at this position right now, but maybe in 3 years he could be. So Mafe, I think, is a worthy project for Houston to take on here in the second round. Back to the Jets. I did it in my last mock, and I actually really like this fit. Kyler Gordon coming a lot of too high, soft cover 2 and cover 4. Robert Saleh, I think he got a name for himself in San Francisco as a member of that single high cover 3 tree coming from Seattle. But he's added in cover 4 and some more too high looks into his defense over his tenure with the Jets, really just last year. But because of that, I think there might be a fit here with Kyler Gordon. It just gives you one more player to rotate in with DJ Reed and Bryce Hall. So you're having options there, and none of those guys, this is basically a page out of the Cincinnati playbook. We'll see what Gordon becomes, but you're basically looking at a room where no one is a clear-cut number 1 lockdown corner, but you just have a bunch of solid players that can play outside cornerback, which are few and far between as is. So if you have a collection of them and you feel good about rotating 3 to 4 of them in, I think you're in a healthy spot as a franchise and as a defense. On to number 39, I'm going to go into your offensive line for the next couple of picks, starting with Darian Kinnard coming off the board. And I guess he's actually labeled as a tackle, so I do apologize. Darian Kinnard to Chicago. I think this is your James Daniel replacement at the minimum. Could also be a guy you maybe move out to tackle. We'll see once we get to camp. And then sticking on the offensive line, actually, I beg your pardon, changing it up. Kenny Pickett going to be the pick here at 40. You could go either way with this, but Pickett and Ebiketie are going to be my picks here for the Seattle Seahawks. Ebiketie, you add a nice, wide 9 rusher in that 4-man front that, kind of Seattle's become, known for. Pair him up with Darrell Taylor. I think that makes a ton of sense as your, pass rush duo of the future. And then Kenny Pickett, obviously, quarterback is going to be something they want to address. I think they are the most likely team to land a Baker Mayfield, leaving Jimmy Garoppolo to go to Carolina. Maybe, maybe, I don't even know at this point. He's such an interesting person to monitor what his stock really is and the smoke thrown out by the 49ers and other teams, et cetera, et cetera. I could talk about it for days, but Pickett, even if Seattle does get a Baker Mayfield, gives you an insurance policy there. Let's say Baker does bottom out and he kind of becomes an afterthought as an NFL quarterback. Kenny Pickett's there to try to level out the floor and maybe be the franchise guy moving forward. So I think it's worth a shot in the dark. And if you're going to get a quarterback here in the 40s, which we're going to have another one come off the board here in a moment, I think that's a solid place. That's good process, right? A guy who there were first round conversations about, you got him in the top of the second, it's worth throwing a dart at. For the Colts here at 42, I think this would be an absolute slam dunk. Whether it's Jahan Dotson or Sky Moore, that slot wide receiver of the future, someone who can win underneath, in the intermediate parts of the field and downfield with their speed. Slam dunk there. Nice pairing with Michael Pittman, and you're just giving Matt Ryan a chance, right? You're trying to win the AFC South. You need more wide receiver talent around Matt Ryan. He's always, until last year, had some pretty solid wide receivers to work with. Sky Moore, Michael Pittman Jr. I think it's a nice tandem to give Matt Ryan. And speaking of the Falcons, Matt Corral. This is going to be the final of the 5 quarterbacks in today's video. Apparently they like Corral a lot, and I'd be interested to see what Corral and, coming from this Lane Kiffin, very collegey offense looks like with Arthur Smith, which is this old school, ground and pound focused type of look. This would be a really interesting pairing. And it would also give Corral a chance to, maybe if you do think, hey, very college offense at Ole Miss, he doesn't have to start right away because you have Marcus Mariota. But, probably by midway through the season, they're probably, chatter about, starting Corral anyways. And this would give you a draft where Atlanta potentially has their franchise quarterback in the future, and they pair Garrett Wilson with Kyle Pitts, trying to reshape that offense to get it back to what it was in years past. The only downside, the defense doesn't get addressed until we get to the next second-round pick. And obviously, if you were to look at the Falcons teams of past, you would say, yeah, the offense is what it once was and it needs to get better. But the defense is even worse. And really, we've used the first 2 picks here for Atlanta addressing the offense, which feels like you're kind of running on a treadmill. You're working hard, exerting energy, burning calories, but not getting anywhere. So, tough look there for Atlanta. But that's kind of the nature of the biz sometimes. On to 44, I think this would be another stellar pick. Deshaun Watson, regardless of what you think about him off the field, and I'll keep those to myself. Jahan Dotson and Amari Cooper, two natural route runners and guys who can win at all three levels. Yeah, that would be a really nice wide receiver tandem to give a guy like Deshaun Watson. Then you still have a Donovan Peoples-Jones who gives you size and a vertical tree to work with as well. Mitchell Schwartz, a gadget player. You have other players who have their specialties, and you can add them into the mix, and it gives you a really nice wide receiver room. Maybe not the most star-studded outside of Amari Cooper, but well-rounded. And again, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about with the Chiefs. Is there something to maybe, if you don't have a superstar, I think Amari Cooper could classify as one, but having well-rounded, options and players who can win at multiple levels and be able to say, hey, we have multiple deep threats, we have multiple intermediate threats, we have multiple people who can impact the game yards after the catch. I think there's something to that. On to the Baltimore Ravens at 45, tangent aside. I think Chad Muma, this is a pick that I grow more and more fond of, especially moving on from Wink Martindale. You're not going to blitz your inside linebackers as much. You still have Patrick Queen there, which, a lot of Ravens fans aren't necessarily thrilled with what he's become. Still time for him to develop. But Muma, as your, coverage linebacker of sorts, if you want to call that his specialty, with Patrick Queen being the head hunter and the blitzer, I think it's a nice tandem there in the middle. Moving on to the Vikings. I know we went corner in round one, but safety / slot corner, an area of need, and Daxton Hill's a special player, an unbelievable athlete. And if you just make him a box safety, and as Harrison Smith gets older, maybe you don't want him as your deep guy, or you could counter the argument with, yeah, he's losing a step, so let's make sure he's 15-20 yards away from the line of scrimmage. Either or, I could buy into what you're slicing there. Cameron Bynum, we'll see what he could potentially be as a starting safety, but Daxton Hill gives you a starting nickel / box safety option. And realistically, in my eyes, I think teams are going to start to embrace more and more three safety looks. You saw, just 2 seasons ago now, the Chiefs and the Bucs kind of being the forefront to having three safeties on the field at once playing in the Super Bowl. So I think that's a trend that will start to catch hot. So Daxton Hill gives you some options there for Minnesota. And, honestly, even if he's just your slot corner, him plus Kyler Gordon is a huge bolster to a wide receiver or corner room, that needs a ton of help. And, maybe at this spot, if these were the first 2 picks, you would say, okay, you're starting a corner, Kyler Gordon. You have Cameron Dantzler, kind of a mixed bag. I don't know why Mike Zimmer wasn't crazy about him, but that kind of ruins my excitement about him. And then Daxton Hill in the slot. Okay, young, promising. We'll see what it becomes, right? You kind of put you on the path to potentially solving that issue. Back to the Washington Commanders. We'll see. I'm kind of interested if you're a Washington fan. What do you think of this pick? But Brian Asamoah is tricky to go with here because Jamin Davis was your first-round pick last year. That said, I think with the second rounder, you don't mind as much position overlap and skill set overlap because it's a second rounder and everyone focuses on the first rounder because it's got a whole day dedicated to that first round. Asamoah, though, minimum a solid down the line Cole Holcomb replacement, as he can be a sideline to sideline rangy pass coverage focused type of linebacker. Those long arms can make an impact there. And if it really worked out and he's really good in the second round, maybe you pair him up with Jamin Davis taking a step in year 2. Or maybe Cole Holcomb, gets even better this year. And you have those two. You're just throwing darts at a position of need. So I'd look at this draft class for Washington. I'd say you added a big body, vertical, a lot of speed wide receiver in Christian Watson. All right, check. You added Lewis Sin, in my opinion, the second best safety in this class. All right, check. And then Brian Asamoah trying to solidify an area of weakness to finish off that defense and have it be a potentially dominant unit. Check. So I like Asamoah here. Obviously, he's the man making this mock, but let me know what you think if you're a Commanders fan. Back to the Bears. I fall more in love with this pick every time I make it. Jalen Tolbert, you get that guy who can win at the contested catch point. Also has some downfield speed. Pair him with Darnell Mooney. Give Justin Fields a shot. We went offensive line earlier. Now you get him a pass catcher, trying to put pieces in place for Fields to have some success. Then I'm going to go offensive line for New Orleans here, and Tyler Smith stays pretty close. Pretty sure Tulsa's near New Orleans. I should know that before I say it. But Smith gives you a potential to run Armstead replacement, tackle, guard flexibility. I've seen him listed as both, so we'll see. I think he moves really well, and I think that's part of why maybe he's not polished now. So people are saying you start him at guard and move him out to tackle, but that fluid of a mover. And as much as I praise Baltimore for being a player development factory, New Orleans has done a really good job, and they have a good track record of turning draft picks into their homegrown talent. So maybe Tyler Smith is the next of that ilk. Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to go to the edge rushing spot here. So we've gone Jameson Williams after you traded up from 29 and 30 to move to 11. What are the next big areas of need? Well, we have 2 second-round picks, the ones that immediately jump to mind. cornerback replacement for Charvarius Ward, and edge rusher, especially, we'll see at the time of this recording, no news on Melvin Ingram. I think that would make a ton of sense to bring him back as a safe baseline. But let's go Drake Jackson. Gives you a little bit of speed, working off the edge, force quarterbacks to step up in the pocket and find themselves a whole lot of Chris Jones. I think that fit makes some sense. I don't know if he's necessarily super polished right now, but I also see Kansas City coming from a spot of saying, USC didn't totally tap into that potential. We can, so we can get better value than pick 50 really shows we see, Jackson as, right? We think we can make him a better player than pick number 50 in the draft. Hopefully that point makes sense. And obviously you need to get better there. And Frank Clark, they kept him on the roster, decided to pay him and not Tyreek Hill. I don't know. Well, not my decision to make. Then we get back to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I told y'all I wasn't done with defense. Jaquan Brisker is going to be my pick here. You pair him up with Anthony Harris as your deep safeties and a lot of cover or too high looks. I think that is a match made in heaven. So 4 picks for the Eagles, all on defense. And we made it a huge impact on adding an edge, adding a linebacker, a safety, and a corner. Legitimately, all 3 levels of defense have been impacted, and both areas of the secondary where they need to get better, number 2 corner and safety, have gotten better. Now, the big missing part here in my eyes is the big body, wide receiver, wide catch radius for Jalen Hurts. That's still a need here, but maybe it's something you can try to address through a trade, free agency. If not, it continues to be a need past this year, and Hurts has to make do with what he has. But I think the defense takes a huge step forward, and overall, I think that makes your team a whole lot better. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, not really in love with this pick. I think I said this last time, but at the worst, Roger McCreary proves, he's a really good man-to-man slot corner. Maybe you could use him in the blitz game. Not really something he's shown a whole lot of tape, but also played a whole lot of outside corner. So we don't really know. It's just kind of an unknown commodity there for McCreary. But minimum, he becomes your starting slot corner, and you have Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, Keller Witherspoon rotating on the outside. Not in love with any of those 3 guys, but they're all NFL players, and they can rotate and move it around. And, again, talking about the Bengals, none of those guys are special. I think all those guys are probably better than Levi Wallace and Keller Witherspoon, though. That's kind of the missing value here. But Pittsburgh would have a rotation of guys that are NFL starters on the outside. McCreary could be the next one. Small arms, definitely a concern. Push comes to shove, you just move into the slot, and Sutton stays on the outside full time. For the Green Bay Packers at pick 53, I'm going to stick with edge. I've been going Drake Jackson here, but he is not available. Let's go Kingsley Enagbare, a guy who needs to learn some extra pass rush moves. Great size, great arm length, can win with power. Just needs to add a couple moves, be able to work to the inside against tackles, inside shoulder against tackles, and maybe add a move or 2 to win for the outside. So you have a well-balanced arsenal there for Kingsley Enagbare to lean on. But I look at Green Bay and how they developed Rashawn Gary into a budding superstar type of guy here after his year 3 showing and breakout. Maybe they do the same thing with Enagbare, teach him a couple moves, and have him be the next big thing in Green Bay. For the New England Patriots, let's go back to the linebacker. Well, Christian Harris feels like an inevitability in a lot of ways for the Patriots. Feels a lot like Donta Hightower, this guy who can blitz from the inside. Feels like a New England guy. They did make the trade for Mack Wilson, so I could see Harris being the headhunter, blitzing guy, and Mack Wilson being the more coverage-focused inside linebacker. So, again, I've talked about this with the Ravens earlier. Feels like a nice tandem to have there in the middle. And for the Arizona Cardinals, going a little different here. And I could also see this guy coming off the board with the next pick, or in 2 picks, or in 3 picks, potentially even in 4 picks. So I think this is really where Travis Jones, if he's still available here, which there's no guarantee, he could go top of the 2nd round to the Jets for all I know. Travis Jones makes a ton of sense here. This is your Corey Peters replacement. You get that run-stopping nose, who gives you some pass rush upside as well. But just his run-stopping ability lightens the load for J.J. Watt, and a guy who's battled a ton of injuries. Maybe by saying, J.J., don't worry about stopping the run. Get to the quarterback. That's all we need from you. Maybe that helps him stay on the field a little bit more. But we went edge, George Karlaftis in round 1. You got a guy who helps plug, the middle, and again, alleviating the focus for other players to have to contribute in the run game. They're going to have to, but if you have Travis Jones who eats that up and allows those players to focus more on getting to the quarterback and maybe cheat a little bit, right? You get to those draws and, Karlaftis is already so far up the field. He's not making a play on the running back. Okay, well, Travis Jones is there. Throwing out a hypothetical at you, but I think having that big body nose that Arizona really, not in my lifetime, has never really had, stand out at least, I think that would do a lot for Arizona. And I even kicked this around in my last mock. If you add a Travis Jones, I'd love to see what that means for an Isaiah Simmons, who's his super versatile guy. And if he doesn't have to focus on the run game, where does that focus turn to? And with Zaven Collins, a guy who, I was contemplating maybe he could play 3-4 outside linebacker and be a straight pass rusher. Maybe because Jones and what you get as him as a run stopper allows you to tap into more of that pass rush potential with Zaven Collins. I don't know. Interesting proposition, though. And for the Dallas Cowboys, a name that I haven't thrown out into these mocks in a while, but Nick Benito, I think he's totally live to go in the second round. And for Dallas, we went IOL in round 1. Edge continues to be a need after you lose Randy Gregory. Nick Benito could slot in, I think, a base 4-3. This is a stellar fit for him. For the Buffalo Bills, I think I've been going with Calvin Austin here, but if I've been going Khalil Shakir, I apologize for continuing that trend here, but this feels like a perfect slot replacement for Cole Beasley, a guy with a ton of speed, ton of spark, a true jitterbug, but also Khalil Shakir, and part of the reason I feel confident that I've been taking Calvin Austin in the past. Khalil Shakir, 6 foot, so he's not necessarily small. He can make some plays down the field as well. Maybe not, Moss and Fools, but he's not small, and you can, push him down the field, and he's not going to, stand out and feel overpowered compared to other players. Back to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go with a different name here than someone I've been going with in these videos. I'm going to go Sam Williams, and I'll even pull up the scouting report here on Pro Football Focus. And you see this pass rush grade. That's really what I'm keying in here. Feels like a guy who might get a ton of buzz as the process progresses. And for Atlanta, the love of God, find pass rush, right? That's been the focus for half a decade or more now. So Sam Williams, maybe they're leaning into that PFF grade and say, hey, in an SEC conference that is, the premier conference in college football, Williams had a ton of success getting to the quarterback. Well, let's take a shot on that guy here in round 2. We finally address the defense for the Falcons. Williams is the pick. We'll see if it pans out. Back to the Green Bay Packers. Let's go get that second wide receiver. In previous mocks, I've been going 2 wide receivers in round 1, and knowing Green Bay, just know that's not going to happen. They have to take one, though. They have to take one. But let's go pair John Mechie III up with Treylon Burks. You have the big body dude who can work from the slot, create some separation in the shallow intermediate parts of the field, winning contested catch spots. Let's go add a downfield burner. You also lost MVS. I know Devontae Adams is definitely the focus of what you lost, but you do lose a downfield playmaker in MVS. Go replace that with John Mechie III. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm not necessarily in love with this fit, but let's go Dylan Parham here at pick 60. This solidifies the interior offensive line. We went IDL the first pick. Now you go IOL, and you make up for the lost player in Alex Kappa with the Dylan Parham, a guy who I think plug and play could start at guard, and also comes with some center flexibility. So you have some potential given, maybe Ryan Jensen takes a step back or whatever you want to do with that contract in, maybe 2 years' time. So potential options down the line for Tampa Bay. For the San Francisco 49ers, sticking on the IOL. This might be a little rich for Cole Strange's blood, but back in around 2, I don't hate it. And he is a zone blocking fit for San Francisco, and it kind of rights, I don't want to call it a wrong as Notre Dame fan here. I can't call Aaron Banks a bad pick, but just didn't feel like the right setting for Banks to have success in. I almost wish Banks went to a team like Baltimore, that power run scheme, or Tennessee. Feels like he would have fit in better there than the zone blocking focus of the Shanahans. Cole Strange, though, is a fit. He comes with guard center flexibility, so like Cole Strange a lot for San Francisco. And at pick 62, talked about, Kansas City. If you're going to trade up from 29 to 30, okay, you got the wide receiver, what's left, edge, and a cornerback replacement for Charvarius Ward. I think one of the places where Martin Emerson could have a ton of success, one of the best fits for him, is in Kansas City. This franchise that has prioritized big body wide receivers who can press at the line. Emerson checks both those boxes and has found ways to have them grade out better in Pro Football Focus's system, but I think just get better play out of him in general, right? Nobody looks at Rashawn Fenton and says, geez, that's a starting NFL quarterback if I've ever seen one. But they've gotten solid play out of him. And he kind of fits that mold, and, a ton of credit to Spags. We went edge. That will hopefully help out, the world of Martin Emerson as a rookie cornerback potentially stepping into a starting spot if he does go to Kansas City. But I think this is a scheme fit, a body type fit for what the franchise is looking for in those types of players. And, furthermore, just a good value, I think, here at 62. This is right around where I think Emerson starts to, kind of come to teams' mind. Late 2, you get into the 3rd round, and Emerson, I think, starts becoming an option for teams. For the Cincinnati Bengals, 2 picks to go. Let's go Logan Hall. Still trying to figure out what they're going to do on the interior of the defensive line. Law does give you some flexibility and some potential rotation options on the edge. So I like him as both, 4-3 interior rusher, but also as a guy who could kick out and maybe play a couple snaps at the edge rushing spot. We'll see what Hall decides to do with his body, and that'll come down to conversations with the team. So ultimately, not something I know a whole lot about. And to round out this 2-round mock, I'll show you some of the names. It's going to be Abraham Lucas. So the rest of the names here are the top remaining players per Pro Football Focus. I beg your pardon. And there's definitely some intriguing names, some guys who certainly could make their way into round 2 or maybe even earlier. Especially these Georgia linebackers, they could certainly be live. Perrion Winfrey, especially if the Bucs went IOL, maybe Zion Johnson's still there at 27. Winfrey could be their IDL. A pick there at 60. Daniel Falele, Nicholas Petit-Frere, I think is one of the more NFL-ready guys who could potentially be there in round 3. Jalen Petrie, also a guy I have a hard time putting in the second round of these mocks, and he could be the pick here as a Kareem Jackson replacement for Denver. But let's go Abraham Lucas, and let's round out this draft. Hopefully you all enjoyed this 2-round NFL mock draft. We'll have another one coming to you next week. Here's another look at my first round, and if you did enjoy today's video, be sure to hit that like button. Help me out a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more football coverage, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, join me for a conversation down below in the comment section. What'd you think of my mock draft? Who's your favorite team? What prospects do you like? Who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too far? Love to have your thoughts and have a conversation in the comment section. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.